So we're on Daf Bet Amud Bet, 8 lines from the bottom. Ahaim now Meucha.
Bet Amud Bet.
Okay. So we concluded yesterday. We learned yesterday that Shura Da'ani v'Shura Derech Kohen Chadu. So the time that the poor person is eating his bread with salt, and the Kohen is entering and eating his Truma, it's both at the same time. They're both at Tzedek Kochavim. That's what we said at the beginning, and then we had this question, and we had this a question from the third Braita. As we learned, is in this page, this Amud, there's 3 Braitot. We challenge the statement that we about the timing. We challenge it 3 times, and from the third Braita, we challenge this statement that we say that the Ani and Kohen is all the same time. Tzedek Kochavim. And if that's the case, so then it looks like there's no argument, the Gemara says, between Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Yehoshua. Because if we say that they're both at the same time, then Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Yehoshua are not arguing. And it's very clear from the Braita, from this third Braita, that they are arguing. Therefore, the conclusion is different. And Shura Da'anich Lechud, Shura De'Kohen Lechud. There's 2 separate times, 2 different times. Okay? So now what we need to figure out is when is, so of course, a Kohen, as we mentioned, the first page and the second page is Tzedek Kochavim, when 3 stars appear. So, but when is the Ani, when is the time of the poor person eating his bread with salt? So that's the question that now we're going to learn. Which time is later than the Kohen eating his Truma? The Gemara said, Mistabra Da'ani Mucha. It makes sense, it's logical to say that the time that the poor person is eating bread is later than the time that the Kohen is going inside his house and eating Truma. In other words, it's later than Tzedek Kochavim. Okay? Because if you want to argue and say that the Ani is the time that the Ani is eating his bread, it's prior to Tzedek Kochavim, it's before Tzedek Kochavim, it's earlier than Tzedek Kochavim. If that's the case, Rabbi Chanina, I know Rabbi Eliezer. If that's the case, so there's no argument between Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Eliezer. Again, what did Rabbi Chanina say? Rabbi Chanina said, right? When the poor person is eating his bread with salt. And what is Rabbi Eliezer saying? Rabbi Eliezer is saying, when they sanctify the day, when people sanctify the day. In other words, twilight, ben Hashpashot. So if you want to argue and say that the Ani is before Tzedek Kochavim, in other words, it's twilight. What do we have before Tzedek Kochavim? Twilight, right? So if that's the case, there's no argument between Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Eliezer, and it's very clear from the third Braita on this page that there is an argument. So we cannot say that it's before. So we cannot say that the time that the Ani Ochel Pito, it's before the Kohen, before the time of the Kohen, and therefore the Gemara says that we have to say Elav Shmamina, the Ani Muchar Shmamina. We have to say that it's after Tzedek Kochavim. First, Kohen is eating his Truma, Tzedek Kochavim, and only then we have that the poor person is eating his bread. Of course, the Tosfot has a question here in the last page. Why can we say that there's a difference between them in terms of the minutes? No, not the last one, the one before the last one. It says, "V'lo matzeh le'memar da'ani kadim lekidush hayom, o kidush hayom kadim lishura da'ani." זה לא מסתבר לחלק כל כך בשיעורי זמן שכיבה כל הזמנים הללו יתבה. It says, perhaps you can say that, it's maybe it's slightly shortly before the Ani is eating his bread, shortly before the sanctified day, or it's after. Maybe we can play with the minutes here. It doesn't say it doesn't make sense. It's all the time of Shchiva, it's all the time when you go to sleep. It doesn't make sense to make those differences between a few minutes here, a few minutes there. It's not logical. It's lo higuni. It doesn't make sense. And therefore we have to say it's ben Hashpashot, and we can't say that, because then there's no argument between Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Eliezer. So we're forced to say that the Ani is eating his bread after Tzedek Kochavim. That's the conclusion of the Gemara. The Gemara says, Amar Mo, Amar le Rabbi Yehuda, V'alo kohanim b'od yom tovim. So we learned yesterday, there's a question here. One of the opinions as Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says that when can we start recite Kriyat Shema? It's when the Kohanim are going to the mikveh. But 1 second, we have a big question. The Kohanim are going to the mikveh during the day. We don't say Kriyat Shema. We don't recite Kriyat Shema during the day. It says when you go to sleep, who goes to sleep during the day? So that was the question that he asked, but we didn't get to the answer. So now the Gemara will get to the answer when we finish explaining the times, Now it's time to understand the Braita, the third Braita. The Gemara says, Shapir ka amar le Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Meir. I mean, what are you going to answer? He said well. He gave him it's a kind of a knockout. It's a good question. Shapir ka amar. So what are you going to say? What's your answer? Nobody is going to sleep today. So how can you say that you should read Kriyat Shema when the Kohanim are going to the mikveh, when they're immersing themselves in the mikveh? The answer is, Rabbi Meir, no, you didn't understand what Rabbi Meir is saying. Rabbi Meir says, Mi savar da'ana ben hashashot yidach ka'amina. Ana ben hashashot Rabbi Yossi ka'amina. Rabbi Yossi, דאמר רבי יוסי, בין הששות הוא כרף עין, זה נכנס וזה יוצא ואי אפשר לעמוד עליו. So the answer, Rabbi Meir says, look, your question is, you are asking a good question, because you think that I'm referring to Ben Hashashot of your Ben Hashashot. There's two Ben Hashashot. As we all know, after sunset, there's Ben Hashashot. That's what we know, that's what we hold, that's the custom, sunset, Ben Hashashot. But there's a different Ben Hashashot of Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi's Ben Hashashot is a very short period of time, as a blink of an eye, before Tzet HaKochavim, before 3 stars appear. That's Ben Hashashot, and nobody can determine this time. It's a very, very short time. Okay? It's a blink of an eye. And so I'm saying that the time that the Kohanim are going to the mikveh is not at not prior to our Ben Hashmashot, because in that case you're right. It's a good question. It's during the day. I'm talking about Rabbi Yossi's Ben Hashmashot, and that's what I hold. I hold like Rabbi Yossi's Ben Hashmashot, that it's shortly before Tzedek HaKochavim. If that's the case, it makes sense that to read Kriyat Shema at that point, because it's very shortly before Tzedek HaKochavim, and kind of people are getting ready to go to sleep. So that's can be considered B'Shukhavcha. It's when people go to sleep. So it's not your Ben Hashmashot where it's before Ben Hashmashot. It's like maybe night, Safek. Right? So people and Kohanim go to the mikveh before that period. So in that's the case, of course, it's a good question. I'm talking about Rabbi Yossi's Ben Hashashot. That it's few minutes, half a minute, even in fact, a few seconds before Tzedek HaKochavim. That's the point where you can read a Kriyat Shema. So if that's the case, it all makes sense. The Gemara says, okay, one second, you bring here 3 braitot, and after bringing those 3 braitot, we have 2 contradictions. What's a contradiction? The Gemara says, Kasha de Rabbi Meir de Meir. There's a contradiction here on what Rabbi Meir is, because one place Rabbi Meir says, or we learn that the first Braita says that one Rabbi Meir says that when should you read Kriyat Shema is when people are going inside and eating their bread on Friday night. As we mentioned, particularly Friday night, because the meal is ready, not the weekdays. So that's one statement of Rabbi Meir. But the different place says, Bizman the different place it says, at Tzet HaKochavim, right? When the Kohanim are going, when the Kohanim are immersing themselves in the mikveh. Sorry, not Tzet HaKochavim. When the Kohanim are immersing themselves in the mikveh. So that's before twilight, right? So what's going on? What is he saying here? What is Rabbi Meir saying? There's a contradiction. Okay? What's the answer? The Gemara says, Tretaneh lebad Rabbi Meir. Okay, there's 2 rabbis that are arguing what exactly Rabbi Meir said. So it's not a contradiction between Rabbi Meir itself. It's like he said something, and perhaps 2 students really didn't understand what he said, and each one said that Rabbi Meir just said that, the other rabbi said Rabbi Meir said that. So it's 2 rabbis that are arguing what exactly Rabbi Meir said.
Yeah, but wouldn't it say Divrei Rabbi Meir? It doesn't say Divrei Rabbi Meir, it says Rabbi Meir, meaning mashma הוא אמר את זה בעצמו.
Yeah, Divrei Rabbi Meir according to this rabbi.
No, I'm saying it would say Divrei Rabbi Meir, but the brightest doesn't say Divrei Rabbi Meir, it says Rabbi Meir Omer. Right?
So yeah, so
Rabbi Meir, he says, that's what he said. That's not what his students are saying in his name.
Yeah, but you need to know that most of the Braitot, it's what the students remember from the rabbis. Many of the Braitot. Because, Rabbi Meir said that, and not like today we have Zoom, you have cameras, you can know what he said, you can just listen to it. The rabbi said, yeah, I guess 2 students were sitting next to him and said, Rabbi Meir said this, and the other student said, no, Rabbi Meir said that. So they're arguing what Rabbi Meir said. The second question is, Kasha de Rabbi Eliezer. We have another question on Rabbi Eliezer, because one place, Rabbi Eliezer, one of the Braitot, it says, one place it says, Rabbi Eliezer holds that when is the proper time to recite Kriyat Shema? It's when we sanctify the day on Friday night, meaning at sunset, right? So that's the time where we should read Kriyat Shema. And in our Mishnah, what does it say? בזמן שהכהנים נכנסים לאכול בתרומתן, right? ממתי קוראים נשמע בערבית? בשעה שהכהנים נכנסים לאכול בתרומתן, עד סוף השמונה הראשונה, דבר רבי אליעזר. So Rabbi Eliezer in our Mishnah is saying that the time to read Kriyat Shema is tzedek kochavim. So it's a contradiction. So here we have two answers. The first answer is same answer that we mentioned as we answered the question about Rabbi Meir. About Rabbi Eliezer, there's two rabbis that they argue, that disagree about what Rabbi Eliezer exactly said. First answer. Second answer. Second answer is that you should not read the Mishnah the way you read it up to now. The way you should read the Mishnah is as follows. When is the proper time to read Kriyat Shema בערבית? בשעה שהכהנים נכנסים לאכול בתרומתן. Okay? That's the statement of Tanna Kama, so to speak. And then Rabbi Eliezer says, עד סוף השמונה הראשונה, דבר רבי אליעזר. Okay? So Rabbi Eliezer is not referring to בשעה שהכהנים נכנסים לאכול בתרומתן. He holds that the time to start reading Kriyat Shema is when you send the sanctified day at Friday night. Okay? But now, when is the deadline? That's Rabbi Eliezer. That's what Rabbi Eliezer is saying. Rabbi Eliezer said the deadline is at Sof HaShema Rashona, at the end of the first watch. But he's not arguing about when to say Kriyat Shema. He's not saying anything in our Mishnah when to start with Kriyat Shema. Okay? So that's the second answer why there's no contradiction. Okay, let's continue a bit more with the Gemara. At Sof HaShema Rashona. So again, we said that the first opinion, and when is the deadline? Up to when a person can read Kriyat Shema is until the end of the first watch. So Gemara has a question. My Kasavar Rabbi Eliezer. What is Rabbi Eliezer holding? What does he hold? I Kasavar shalosh mishmot velayla lema ad arba shaot. Vi Kasavar arba mishmot velayla lema ad shalosh shaot. What is Rabbi Eliezer holding? If he holds that the night is divided to 3 watches, then why can't you simply say 4 hours, right? Until 4 hours from the time the Kohanim eat the Tumah, count 4 hours, and that's the time that you have to read Kriyat Shema. Why are you using the word mishmorot? If you hold like the other rabbi that says that the night is divided to 4 watches, so that's the case. So why not say 3 hours? A person needs to read Kriyat Shema from tzedek kochavim, and he has 3 hours to read Kriyat Shema. So just to elaborate on this question, the question here is divided for 2 parts. The first part is, why are you using a mishmoret that people are not so familiar with this word mishmoret? People are more familiar with hours, so use terms of hours, right? When are you going to tell me when you're going to the restaurant, when you come to visit? I'm not going to tell you 20 minutes after sunset. I'm going to tell you 5:30, right? Using the hours. So why not simplify? No, why not use a simple term that people use in those days and so nowadays? But the second question that's more important here is, why are you using a word that really doesn't? Why are you confusing us with something that there's a big discussion? Later on we're going to learn that there's a big machloket. When is Ashmoret? No, when is Ashmoret? That the Mishmerot, the night is divided into 3 or 4. And we don't know what you hold. Why don't, if there's a machloket, if there's already a confusion, why can't you say what you hold and end of the story? Why are you using Mishmoret 3? Because we don't know what you're saying. We don't know if you hold 3 or if you hold 4. So that's basically the question. So what's the answer? The answer is Lema Leolam Kasavar Shalosh Mishmorot Belayla. So he holds Rabbi Eliezer that the night is divided to 3 watches. Okay? So in other words, every watch is 4 hours, right? You have 12 hours, 4 hours. Hakam Mashmana. And that's why Rabbi Eliezer is using the word Mishmerot. At Sof HaShema Rishona. The Ika Mishmerot Perikya, the Ika Mishmerot Ar'a. Because there is 3 watches in heaven, when the angels are switching the jobs. Every mishmeret, every watch, there's an angel in charge of this watch, and then when he ends it, then there's a different angel comes and he's in charge of the second one, and then the third one again, a new angel comes and he's in charge of the third one. As we later on we're going to learn about the Kohanim in Bet HaMikdash, right? There was also 3 watches, and the Kohanim was switching the jobs, right? Each one has his job. So the Gemara says, just as in the Rakia in heaven, there's 3 watches. The same thing we have. It's also down below, where in our world, there's also 3 watches. Okay. And why is it so important to know about the watch? As the Gemara says, the Tanya, Rabbi Eliezer אומר, 3 משמרות בלילה, על כל משמר יושב הקדוש ברוך הוא ושואג קרי. שנאמר, השם מאוד ישאג, מאוד קודשו ייתן קולו, שהרוג ישאג על נבהו. So Rabbi Eliezer says that there's 3 watches, and every single watch, Hashem is roaring like a lion over the destruction of the temple and this place of Am Yisrael, that they're not living anymore in Eretz Yisrael. Shenema, as we learn in Yirmiyah, it says 3 times that he's roaring. Yashom Imorog Yishag, the first one, Imorog Kocho Iten Kolo, and Shog Yishag and Neveu. So you see 3 times it says Ishag, Shoeg, Yishag. So 3 times of each one, each Shoeg is referring to a different watch, and altogether it's 3. So he's crying over the destruction. Is Memorom Yishag from his high places he's roaring, and Memoron Kocho from his sanctuary, from his holy place, and Neveu, also another word for Bet HaMikdash. So he's 3 times is crying. And if you want to know, the Gemara says, if you want to know when those watches start, when they start, when they end, the Gemara gives us a sign. Mishmara Rishona Chamor No'er. The first watch, the donkey is braying. Okay. Shniya, the second watch, Klavim is Tzoakim. If you want to know when it starts, then Klavim Tzoakim. The dogs are barking. Shlishit, Tinok Yoneg Mishadei Imo, Ve'isha Mesaperet Im Bala. So the third one, the baby is, the mother is feeding the baby, because the baby is hungry. He wakes up, as we all know. Those that have a family, they know they wake up at 5 o'clock, sometimes 6 o'clock. And subsequently, what happens is that, the wife is wake up, so she starts to talk with the husband. Okay, so that's the result of the baby. Of course, it all starts with the baby. And the Gemara says, the Gemara has a question here. What's the point? Why does he need to give us those signs? Why is it important for us to know about when the Mishmoret, when is the proper time to pray to Hashem? Because we know those times it's a good time to pray to Hashem. So why is it so important for us to know that? I mean, why do we need those signs? The Gemara has a question. Okay? Are they the beginning of the watch, at the end of the watch? I mean, why do we need those signs? The Gemara says, if those signs are trying to help us to know when the watch start, why do you need a sign for the beginning of the watch? We all know it's night. Right? You look at the heaven, you see it's night, right? So you see it's 3 stars. So then you know you start in the first watch. So why do you need the sign? Why do you need the donkey? And if those signs will help us to know when those watches end, why do we need a sign to the end of the 3rd watch? As we know, it's day already. You can see it's day, right? So why do we need those signs? So of course we cannot say that those signs are helping us to know the beginning of the 1st watch and the end of the 1st watch. So why do we need those signs? The Gemara says, so it says we need those signs because we need to know when the first watch ends, and that's why when we hear the donkey braying, and we need to know the middle of the middle watch, and that's when the dogs are barking. And we also need to know the beginning of the last one, and that's when the baby the mother is feeding the baby. And those times are very important times because the Kishbahu is crying over the galut. So we should also kind of participate and join him, right? And cry over the galut. So when you don't know when you're standing, of course, when you know the beginning and suddenly you're stuck. So if you hear the donkey, then I'm still at this time. I should pray. The Mishmor is switching, as Shulchan Aruch in Siman Aleph says that the best time to pray to Hashem is that it says at the beginning of the night, at the end of the 2nd watch, and the end of the last one. Okay, so that's why it's important to know that. That's the answer. All this is the answer for Rabbi Eliezer. Again, what was the question? The question was, why is he using the word Mishmerot? The answer is because he wants to teach you something very significant, something very unique, something special about Hashem, about the difference between the 1st, the 2nd, and the 3rd watch. That's why Rabbi Eliezer is using this word. Another answer we have. All those signs, we need those signs to know, to determine when is the end of the watch. And of course, if you're going to ask me, the The last one, we don't need the sign for the last one. We can just see. We can open our eyes and see that's the end of the last watch. The Gemara says, "למען נפקא מינה, למקרה קריאת שמע, למען דגנה בבית אפל, דלא ידע זמן קריאת שמע אימת, כיוון דאישה מספרת עם בעלה ותינוק קטין משדי אמו, ליקום וליקרא." The answer is that we need the last one in the sign for a person that is sleeping in a dark room, and there's no windows, and he wants to read Kriyat Shema of Shacharit, and he doesn't know when is the right time to read Kriyat Shema. By the sign of the lady talking with the husband and the baby, and the time where we're feeding the baby, he knows that this is a time to get up and read Kriyat Shema. Okay, so because this is a time that we know when the day starts. Okay, we're not allowed to read Kriyat Shema of the night. You already missed the Kriyat Shema of the night. He needs to know when the Kriyat Shema of the day starts by hearing or knowing that this is a time, or has this feeling. He feels that if this wife, let's say his wife is not really speaking, of course nobody speaks with his wife on a daily basis, right? But he knows, he has this feeling that now I'm ready, I'm awake enough to speak with my wife, or he assumes that that's the time where the baby needs to eat. Okay, it doesn't really actually need to happen, right? Because if that's the case, that's a sign. But he has this feeling that, this is a time for a baby to eat. Okay, he knows based on experience, or this is the time for him to feel, he feels that now he's ready to speak with his wife. Oh, if he feels that, then that's the time to read Kriyat Shema. Baruch Adonai Olam, Amen ve'Amen. Hashem continue.
So Rob, so what happens today?
Once again, Bobby, we have another piece. אמר רבי יצחק בר שמואל משמע דרב, 3 משמעות בלילה. ועל כל משמע ומשמע יושב הקדוש ברוך הוא ושואל, כארי ואומר, אוי לבנים שבאמונותיהם הרחבתי את ביתי, ושרפתי את היכלי והגליתי לבין אומות העולם. So Rabbi Yitzchak, since we mentioned about Hashem that is roaring over the destruction of the temple, Gemara brings a very interesting statement by Rabbi Yitzchak bar Shmuel from the name of Rav that says that the night is divided to 3 watches, and every single watch Hashem is sitting and roaring like a lion, and he says, "Oy labanim shabonotem ichavdi et beti." Or for the children that I displaced them because of their sins, ichavdi et beti, I spiritually destroyed the temple, v'sarafti et echali, and I also burned the temple. So the first one is referring to the spiritual point, because ichavdi, it's like of spiritually, he removed his shechina from the Mikdash. V'sarafti et echali, he destroyed, he burned the temple, and he doesn't say Sarafti Beti because he didn't really burn the entire Beit HaMikdash. It's still Kotel HaMaravi, right? It's Kotel HaMaravi, the Western Wall. And the Igliti Leben Olam, and I displaced them, I took them, and I spread them among other nations. Okay, so that's what Hashem is saying every day on those 3 watches. So Hashem, tomorrow we continue with Tanya Amar B'Yossi.